Ambassador Thelia and Vori stood frozen in the doorway, her iridescent scales shifting from their normal peaceful blue to an alarmed crimson. The human before her, Dr. Marcus Wright, appeared to be willfully poisoning himself with a steaming brown substance. Even more disturbing, he seemed to be enjoying it. By the 7 moons of Athalia, what are you consuming? Thelia's melodic voice crescendoed with concern, her 4-fingered hand flying to cover the respiratory slits at the base of her neck. Marcus looked up from his morning coffee, startled by the alien's dramatic reaction. In the 3 days since the Athelian ambassador had arrived at his home as part of the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Initiative, she had maintained a dignified, almost scientific detachment. This was the first genuine emotion he'd witnessed. "It's just coffee," he explained, offering the mug in her direction. "Would you like to try some?" Thelia backed away, her translucent crest rising in distress. "You ingest this, voluntarily? Every morning." Her universal translator couldn't possibly be working correctly. The heat alone would damage Athelian tissue, and the aroma suggests high levels of toxicity. Marcus couldn't help but laugh, which only intensified Thelia's concerned color shift to a deeper crimson. "I promise it's safe for humans. It's actually quite necessary for many of us to function properly in the morning." He took another deliberate sip, watching her reaction closely. "It contains caffeine, a mild stimulant that helps us wake up." "Your species intentionally consumes stimulants as a daily ritual?" Thelia's head tilted, her large almond-shaped eyes blinking in their peculiar sideways manner. "Fascinating. On Athalia, we absorb nutrients through morning light meditation. No. Brewing required." Marcus gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit." "That's exactly why this exchange program exists, to learn about these differences." Thelia gracefully folded her slender form into the chair, though it was clearly not designed for her physiology. Her scales gradually returned to their calm blue hue as her scientific curiosity overtook her initial alarm. "The documentation I studied mentioned human dependency on external substances, but experiencing it firsthand is quite different." Her delicate fingers reached out hesitantly toward the coffee mug before pulling back. "What other potentially hazardous activities constitute your morning ritual?" "Well, let's see," Marcus grinned, enjoying her genuine interest. "After coffee, I usually take a hot shower." "You voluntarily stand under falling water?" Thelia interrupted, her crest fluttering in disbelief. "Yes, hot water. Then I brush my teeth with a mini paste." "Apply paste to your food processors? With what purpose?" Marcus found himself charmed by her reactions. Most humans he knew found his meticulous morning routine boring or obsessive. But to Thelia, it was an anthropological goldmine. "To clean them and prevent decay," he explained. "What about you? Beyond light meditation, what constitutes an Athelian morning?" Thelia's scales rippled with subtle patterns of blue and gold, a response Marcus was beginning to recognize as pleasure or pride. "We begin with harmonic resonance to awaken our cellular structure, followed by dermal hydration and specially cultivated morning dew," she explained. "Then communal sharing of the night's dream insights." "Dreams?" Marcus leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. "Your species shares dreams?" "Not directly, but we believe dream interpretation is essential to community harmony." Her voice softened. "I miss this ritual most while on Earth. Dreams feel incomplete when kept private." Their eyes met across the table, one pair human brown, the other large and faceted like opals, each suddenly aware of the profound intimacy of sharing such personal cultural details. "Perhaps," Marcus suggested, setting down his coffee mug, "we could create new morning rituals that honor both our traditions while you're here." Thelia's scales flickered with unexpected patterns of pink and lavender, colors Marcus hadn't observed before. "I would find that most agreeable, Dr. Wright." "Please," he smiled, feeling an unexpected warmth that had nothing to do with his coffee. "Call me Marcus." 2 weeks into her Earth assignment, Thelia still couldn't comprehend why humans insisted on taking walks outdoors when perfectly functional environmental simulation chambers existed in most buildings. Yet here she was, strolling beside Marcus through a park on a chilly autumn afternoon, her thermal regulation suit working overtime. "I truly don't understand the appeal," she said, her scales shimmering in confused patterns of blue and amber as crisp leaves crunch beneath her feet. "You endure variable temperatures, unpredictable precipitation, and potential allergen exposure. For pleasure?" Marcus grinned, breathing deeply of the crisp air. "That's exactly the point. The unpredictability makes it real. Don't you have parks on Athalia? We have cultivated meditation spaces, Philia countered, with precisely controlled atmospheric conditions optimized for clarity of thought. She paused, watching a squirrel dart across their path. Though I admit, we don't have autonomous small mammals performing acrobatics for our entertainment. Marcus laughed, the sound warming Philia more than her thermal suit could. She'd become increasingly aware of her physiological responses to him, her scale patterns shifting to warmer hues, her secondary heart beating in an irregular pattern whenever he smiled at her. Speaking of entertainment, Marcus said, gesturing to a nearby bench, I've been meaning to ask about something. Last night, I saw you standing perfectly still in the living room for 3 hours. Were you meditating, or should I be concerned? Philia's scales flashed indigo with embarrassment. You observed my dream state? I should have warned you. Athelians remain conscious during sleep. It's our primary method of processing information. You sleep standing up? With your eyes open? Marcus looked fascinated rather than disturbed. That's incredible, and a little unnerving. Just as I find your human sleep ritual disturbing, Philia countered. You become unconscious, paralyzed, and hallucinate for hours, often while making disturbing noises. Touché. Marcus chuckled. I suppose my snoring has been a scientific curiosity. They sat together on the bench, watching children play on distant equipment. Philia's scales rippled with contemplation. Your species invests considerable energy in your offspring's recreational development, she observed. On Athalia, young ones begin formal knowledge acquisition at the equivalent of your 3 Earth years. No playtime? Marcus asked, sounding genuinely sad. Play is inefficient, Philia said, though she felt unexpectedly defensive of Athelian child-rearing practices. But necessary, Marcus countered gently. Human children learn social skills, problem-solving, creativity, all through play. Philia watched the children more carefully, noting their interactions, negotiations over toys, the way they picked themselves up after falling. Perhaps there was merit to this inefficient approach. Yesterday, I noticed another peculiar behavior, she said, changing the subject. You applied scented chemicals to your body after bathing. Is this another form of human mating ritual? Marcus nearly choked. It's just cologne. It's not necessarily for. Yes, smelling nice can be attractive to potential partners, but it's also just about personal hygiene and preference. Interesting, Philia said, her voice deliberately neutral while her scales betrayed her with flickers of pink. Athelians communicate complex emotional states through natural pheromones. We consider artificial scents intrusive. I'll stop wearing it if it bothers you, Marcus offered immediately. Philia felt a peculiar warmth at his consideration. Actually, I found your particular choice not unpleasant. Though I should note that my species interprets that specific molecular combination as an invitation to deep philosophical discourse. Marcus laughed again. Is that why you asked me about the meaning of existence at breakfast yesterday? Possibly, Philia admitted, her scales shimmering with amusement. I assumed you were initiating an intellectual exchange. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grass, Marcus stood and offered his hand, a human gesture Philia had researched but never experienced. After a moment's hesitation, she placed her 4-fingered hand in his 5-fingered one. The simple contact sent a cascade of unusual sensations through her neural pathways. Her scales illuminated with patterns she'd never displayed before, intricate swirls of gold and violet that, on Athalia, would have unmistakably signaled a profound connection. Are you cold? Marcus asked, noticing the change. No, Philia said softly, allowing him to help her rise. I'm experiencing something entirely new. As they walked back toward Marcus's home, Philia realized with both alarm and excitement that the standard Athelian diplomatic protocols had failed to prepare her for this development. She was beginning to understand human emotions not as an observer, but as a participant, a complication she hadn't anticipated, but increasingly didn't want to resist. The first sign that something was wrong came at breakfast. Marcus, typically punctual to the point of predictability, hadn't emerged from his bedroom at his usual 7:15 a.m. By 7:30, Philia's scales had shifted to a concerned lavender as she approached his door. Marcus, she called softly, her translator modulating her natural harmonics into human speech patterns. Are you performing your morning ablutions? The only response was a muffled groan. Alarmed, Philia overrode her cultural programming about human privacy boundaries and opened the door. Marcus lay tangled in his bedding, his skin flushed and damp. "Sorry," he croaked. "I think I caught a cold." Philia's biomedical training activated instantly. She approached cautiously, her scales flaring with diagnostic patterns. "You've been infected with a pathogen? Should I contact your planetary health authorities?" Marcus attempted a weak laugh that dissolved into coughing. "It's just a cold, Philia. Humans get them all the time. I just need rest and fluids." Philia's brow ridge furrowed. "You intentionally expose yourselves to recurring infections as part of your immune development? Fascinating but concerning." She moved closer, her cranial sensors detecting his elevated temperature. "You're experiencing hyperthermia. We call it a fever. It's how our bodies fight infection." He shivered despite the heat radiating from his skin. "Remarkable inefficiency," Philia murmured, but her tone was gentle. "How can I assist in your recovery protocol?" Over the next 3 days, Philia learned more about human physiology and resilience than all her previous xenobiology studies combined. She mastered the preparation of chicken soup, a traditional human medicinal broth, she had asked, carefully documenting the recipe. She learned to administer the proper dosage of acetaminophen and monitored Marcus's temperature with a concern that went beyond scientific observation. On the third evening, as Marcus's fever finally broke, Philia sat beside his bed reading aloud from one of his favorite books. A task she'd taken upon herself after discovering that human patients responded positively to vocal stimulation during recovery. "You're very good at this," Marcus said, his voice stronger than it had been in days. Philia looked up from the book. "At human phonetics?" "I've been practicing." "At caring," Marcus clarified. "I didn't expect an alien ambassador to play nurse with such dedication." Her scales flickered with complex patterns of rose and gold. "On Athalia, community care is fundamental. No one recovers in isolation." She hesitated, then added, "Though I admit my concern has exceeded standard diplomatic protocols." Marcus reached out, his fingers brushing against the back of her hand, the most deliberate contact they'd shared. "Thank you." The touch sent cascades of color racing across Philia's scales, brilliant, unmistakable patterns that would have announced her emotional state to any Athalian. Thankfully, humans couldn't read such signals. "You should rest," she said, trying to regain her composure. "Human healing requires substantial unconsciousness." "Will you stay?" he asked, his fingers still resting lightly against hers. "Just until I fall asleep." She nodded, settling back into the chair beside his bed. When Marcus's breathing finally deepened into sleep, Philia remained, studying his features in the dim light. The alien angles of his face had become familiar, even beautiful to her. His vulnerability during illness had revealed something her diplomatic training hadn't prepared her for, the complex depth of human resilience and fragility, intertwined in ways her species had never imagined. 2 nights later, fully recovered, Marcus suggested they observe the meteor shower forecasted for that evening. They drove beyond the city lights, spreading a blanket on a hillside beneath the vast night sky. On Athalia, Philia explained as they lay side by side, celestial observation is considered a sacred practice. "We believe stardust composes our essential being." "Some human scientists would agree with you," Marcus said, pointing upward as the first meteor streaked across the darkness. "We're all made of star stuff, as one famous astronomer put it." "Perhaps our species aren't so different in our fundamental philosophies," Philia mused. As the cosmic display intensified, Marcus's hand found hers in the darkness. This time, she didn't analyze her physiological response to his touch, she simply experienced it, her scales glowing with soft patterns visible even in the darkness. "Philia," Marcus whispered, "is it just the starlight, or are you illuminating?" "It's an Athelian response," she admitted quietly, "to emotional connectivity." "What does this particular pattern mean?" he asked, his voice hushed with wonder as he traced a finger just above the swirling patterns on her forearm. Instead of answering with words, Philia turned toward him. Following an impulse that transcended diplomatic protocols and cultural barriers, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead gently against his, the most intimate gesture in Athelian culture. Marcus seemed to understand the significance. With equal gentleness, he raised his hand to cup the side of her face, his thumb brushing over the delicate scales at her temple. "Is this allowed?" he whispered. "No," she admitted, her scales pulsing with patterns of deep rose and gold. And yes, under the ancient light of distant stars, they created something new, a bridge between worlds that neither had anticipated but both now treasured beyond measure.